Hi, and welcome to the Board Wrap-Up Show for the month of October. The Ponca City Board of Education busy in October with a busy meeting, a lot of things going on to talk about in the world of education. And Dr. Pennington's here to do just that. And we've got some issues we'd like to talk about. Certainly the board meeting was an active one on Monday night, talking about bond projects, which it's that time of year.
It is time to do that again. You know, it's been almost a little bit over 3 years since we passed our last bond issue, and it's time for us to again look at how do we improve our facilities, how do we maintain our technology, continue to have enough funds to buy textbooks and instructional supplies, kind of at a district level for our teachers, and make sure that we do the things we need to provide a quality education for our students. So we're looking at some of the parameters that we've set. We've set a parameter of $16.7 million, $16.75 million in this bond issue that we will take to the public in February. We've been directed by the board to really make a significant investment in technology. You know, we've been buying technology for a number of years, and we have a rotation system, but we need to go ahead and really expand the laptop one-to-one initiative at the high school. Our freshmen and our sophomores have computers, but we want to buy them for juniors and seniors, and that way every student at the high school would have a laptop, so 8 through 12. But that will take, you know, that requires a little bit more investment. The other thing is we've bought Promethean boards over the last 5 years or so, but buying 10 Promethean boards a year is never going to get us a Promethean board in every classroom anytime soon. So we're looking at buying, I think, about 125 Promethean boards all at one time, which will put us a Promethean board in every classroom in the district. So those are the things that we're talking about. In addition to that, obviously, anybody that's bought a computer knows that in about 3 or 4 years they've changed the operating system. They've made them faster, bigger, stronger, faster. So you need to replace those computers every 4 years because the software that is written needs more memory. It needs more of the things it takes to make it operate. And so those are the discussions that we've had, and so you'll see a significant, I think, on the bond proposal, a significant investment in technology. For the last several years, we've used $300,000 a year of bond money to buy textbooks. The state does give us some textbook money, but it's not enough, and that $300,000 supplements what the state provides for us to buy textbooks with. And one of the discussions we had last night, you know, when you have laptops at the high school, will you still buy textbooks? Well, no, we won't. But the virtual textbook costs just as much as a regular textbook. So we don't save any money by buying computerized, digitized copies of those textbooks. I think that everybody kind of thought when this digital stuff came out that we were going to save all this textbook money, and it just hasn't happened. The reality is the people that publish textbooks aren't going to lose any money. In fact, they're making more money now because they don't have the cost of printing, and they haven't passed that cost of printing and binding on to consumers. You know, anybody that's I have an iPad and I buy books for my iPad, and you know, it's the same price whether I go buy a hard copy of that book or I buy an iPad copy of the book. It's just the convenience of having it on your iPad. And I'm still old enough, I still like to hold a book.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Your architect also talked in terms of building projects.
Right. What we're looking at doing, kind of the vision is, we still have portable classrooms that we use at Trout and Woodlands, and we have wanted for a number of years to eliminate those classrooms. And some people may remember that in Dr. White's last bond issue, one of the reasons for that bond issue in the renovation of Roosevelt was to eliminate the portable classrooms all throughout the district, add additional space at Roosevelt, and do some redrawing of district lines to do that. And we were headed that direction until the merger happened. And that's when we lost 400 students out of the school district, which resulted in the closure of Washington School. And we again had to redraw our district lines, and so we've continued to use those portable classrooms at Woodlands and at Trout. And so this proposal will eliminate those once and for all, those portable classrooms, add the classrooms to those existing buildings. Also, the other thing we want to do is make those buildings handicap accessible. Right now, if you're a student and you move to Ponca City and you're in a wheelchair and you live in the Trout District, you have to go to school at either Union, Lincoln, or Garfield, someplace that does not require you to walk up and down steps. Roosevelt is also handicap accessible. Well, we want to make Liberty and Woodlands and Trout handicap accessible. We're talking about putting elevators in those schools because our cafeterias in those 3 sites are on the 2nd floor. So it would do that. And we also want to do kind of what we've done at West, and that's create a new front entrance. They won't be as dramatic as the one at West is, but a new front entrance so that when you walk into all of our elementary sites, you have to go to the office. You have to go through the office to get into the building. We think we know that provides more security, and we want to eliminate the ability of individuals to walk into our schools and to be down the hallway before anybody in the office knows they're there. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing, and then we're also looking at making some improvements to the athletic facilities. What we would like to do is replace our exterior of Sullivan Stadium, new fencing, new ticket stands, those kinds of things. And then we want to build new restrooms. If anybody's been to the restroom at Sullivan Stadium on the home side, we did some renovation of those restrooms a few years ago, and it didn't solve our problems. They're just not very good. I mean, they definitely don't reflect what I believe to be the excellence of this school district. That would give us the ability to renovate our concession stand, and then build a new press box, which I'm sure that in some of the other jobs you have, that probably sounds like a pretty good deal.
Oh, those facilities, and we were talking about this morning on the radio, that they're used by a lot of people, and,
Right.
and you may think football only because it is that time of year, but they're used in the spring sports. They're used concession stands for fundraisers. The band uses it. The high steppers use it. There's a lot of usage on those facilities, and I hope people will take that all into consideration.
I think, again, we've been crunching the numbers, and it's like any other bond issue. You don't have enough money to do everything. And so I think that probably the final package that will come out, what the board will look at, is what can we do now, but then what infrastructure can we put in place so maybe when we come back in 3 years, we can go ahead and accomplish some of the things we want to do. You would always, I know that it seems, people wonder why it seems like we're always doing stuff, but we're always trying to improve our facilities. We always want to put the best foot forward that we can. We want to put the best face on the school district. And facilities get old. We had a discussion last night about how old that press box is. And we think it's 30 plus years. I don't think anybody's really sure.
I can tell you that I worked in the old press box, and I believe it was the '84. So it's it's just almost 30 years old, right? That they put this press box together.
And when they put that together, that was as good as anything around.
Absolutely.
And it's like anything else. If you look around districts across the state that we compete with, and you know this as well as anybody, you have to continue to improve. You may not be able to do it all at one time. You may have to do what you can this year and do something else in 3 years, but you need to have a plan in place. You need to be committed to that plan. We've had the same discussion about a Performing Arts Center, and one of the questions I'm sure people have is, well, why aren't we doing the Performing Arts Center? Well, the reason we're not bringing that on this bond issue is because we have yet to acquire all the land north of the stadium. We're still continuing to work on that. We have good discussions with the individual landowners that are left. They're just, at this time, they're just not ready to sell that property. And we started this process with the idea that we were going to acquire that property, and we would do everything we could not to force people to sell to us. We do have the right of eminent domain. We can make that argument, but I just don't think that's the right thing to do at this time, and I don't think it's worth the black eye you get. I mean, I think of and it's over now. People probably it's kind of faded away, but it's there. It's Stillwater there for a few years. was pretty ugly with OSU and some of the landowners around the university. And so we're trying the best we can to make this where both parties agree, and we just, we'll just move forward. So that's the holdup there.
For those historians out there, they may be interested to know a move that the school system used with the old Jefferson Elementary School too.
Well, we're really excited. We closed, I don't remember, obviously before my time, when we closed Jefferson down for structural reasons. We eventually, the Child Development Center, we actually tore down some facilities that were out there, but the Child Development Center has used that building for a number of years, has leased that from us, and they have a beautiful new facility on Grand across the street from East Elementary School, where the old Y used to be. And so that building is vacant again. And last week, when the Child Development Center was having their auction of materials and things they left behind, we were able to kind of piggyback on them, and we put that building we auctioned that building off, and we had a buyer, had an individual that bought that building for $18,000. We're very excited about that because if we would not have sold it, we were going to tear it down, and it would have been expensive to tear that facility down. Not sure exactly what the new owner's going to do with it, but we hope to get all that paperwork done and closed out are here relatively quickly, and we can turn that over to them so they can start giving a new life to that building. So we're very excited about that.
You mentioned the February bond issue vote. Are we going to piggyback our school board elections on that too?
They'll both be the same dates. We have two board members who will be up for, really one for election the first time, the other seat for re-election, and that is Judy Troop and Robin Riley. Viewers may remember that Robin was appointed to the board this summer when we had a vacancy that occurred, and now Judy has served 2 terms on the board and will be running for her 3rd term. And Judy's been a long-time educator in this district, retired. In fact, she retired right about the time that I came to Ponca City. I think her last year to teach was the 92-93 school year. And she was elected to the board in February of '94, right after I had interviewed and had been offered the position here. So we've been here. She's been on the board for the 9 years that I've been here, and obviously as a former classroom teacher, she's a great asset to us. And my understanding is that she's going to run again. Obviously, you don't know what's going to happen until you get to February. They're always it's been interesting. I've had board members tell me they weren't going to run, and then they decided at the last minute to run. I've had board members who said they were going to run at the last minute, decided not to run. But every indication I have from Judy is that she's going to run again, and I think she's served this community well for the last 9 years.
And Mr. Riley, the appointee, has indicated
he's indicated. When he interviewed for the board, he said he was going to run. He's proven to be a very thoughtful individual. I've never, obviously, what I look for in a board member, what the community may look for in a board member may not be the same thing. I like people who ask questions and who listen to answers. And Mr. Riley asks great questions. He reads his agenda and board packet, and I can tell you over the years I've had board members who didn't read their agendas or board packets, so they walked into the board meeting. So we're very fortunate that I believe that's always a good sign. He studies, he reads carefully what we send him, he listens, he's engaging, he's obviously a bright person. And I would say all the same things about Judy Troop. We have we're very fortunate in this community. We have a good board. And of course, anytime you have an election, you don't know what's going to happen. Anytime you get a new board member, you always worry about, how are they going to fit in, how are they going to work with other board members. And even though we had a somewhat contentious election last spring, our new board members, our newest, Dr. Hartman, our newest elected board member, is fitting in very well with the rest of the board, and he's proven to be a valuable asset. And I think the main thing from my perspective, as long as folks don't come in with a set agenda, people run for the board for lots of reasons. Sometimes they run because they're former educators, and maybe as a teacher they thought that the administration did do something right and they want to correct that. they're a parent who they've worked in the PT and other things, and so they've decided they just want to be involved. Sometimes they run because they want to fire the football coach, or they want to fire the coaches are usually a pretty easy target. And you know what people have to understand is a board member is only a board member on the day you have board meetings. The rest of the time they're a regular citizen. They don't have any more insight, any more control, any more influence than anybody else that walks in this door. They don't get special. I mean, they get tickets to ball games, and they may get to know some things a little bit sooner than everybody else. But basically, you know, they're board members on board member day. As an individual, they don't really have any authority. The only authority they have is what the majority of that board opinion is. So, obviously, you always have a chance to influence when you're with a group of people. You have the opportunity to persuade them to your point of view. But as an individual board member, I can't fire anybody. Okay, and the reality is the board plays no role in the termination process or firing process, except that whenever I bring a recommendation to them to terminate somebody, and that person asks for a hearing, they have the hearing, and at that hearing, they're the ultimate decider. So from a day-to-day operation standpoint, they're limited, and the reason for that is the purposeful structure of school districts, because boards by their nature are political. People are elected, and so in order to ensure that employees are treated in a fair manner, you try to take that out of the political process as much as you can, which is why you hire superintendents and principals, superintendents to run the district on a day-to-day basis, principals to run their buildings on a day-to-day basis, to do the evaluation, do the hiring, so that you can't accuse people of getting hired because they know a board member, and people can't say that I lost my job because I made a board member mad. And so that's the purpose of all that. It's all about protecting employees, and sometimes it gets confusing for the public.
One other thing before we end our program, and it's something that people see in the Oklahoman and the Tulsa
Right.
world every day, Ponca City News, and it's the headline, and it is about education and the way schools are doing the A through F grade
Right.
system, and they see Dr. Pennington's name listed with most superintendents across the state that have certain feelings about this, and I just thought you might want to address that.
Well, it's a very complicated issue, and I think there are lots of things that as a school superintendent, as an educator, I don't like about this grade card. The first thing I don't like is this statement we continue to hear from the state superintendent is this is easy and everybody understand what it means. Well, to some degree that's true. I mean, we all know what an A means and we all know what an F means. But you know, the underlying question of that is how is that grade? How is an A or an F figured? You know, I have a college transcript, and on that transcript I have an A in football coaching from Oklahoma State University, and that's good. I'm glad I have an A.
Mm-hmm.
That class met twice. That's back when Jim Stanley was the head football coach, and it was in the spring while they're in the middle of spring practice and recruiting, and we'd show up a lot of days for class, and nobody was there. You know, but I got an A in that class. I have a C in a class, the history of Japan and China. Probably the best class I ever took. I mean, really was great class, great teacher. Probably learned more in that class than any class I've ever taken. But my grade is a C. Now, they're both classes. They're both offered at Oklahoma State University. In fact, I think I may have taken them both the same year. But there's vastly different what the C in one class means than the A in the other class means. And so that's where we are with the grade card, is because on the surface it's simple, but how those grades are configured it's just very complicated. So that's one issue. The second issue is we've had some discussions with the State Department as the grades have been sent out. The way the process works, it was the same way when Superintendent Garrett was at the State Department, is we get a preliminary grade card and they ask us to check the calculations and make sure that we agree with them, and then we have a period in which to submit questions and concerns, and they try to resolve those, and then at the end of the day, if they haven't resolved them to our satisfaction, we can go to the state board and kind of plead our case. We had lots of questions, and everybody across the state of Oklahoma there were lots of questions. To give you an example, in the manual, which is probably this thick, and telling us how these grades are calculated, says that to have for a group of students scores to be shown or calculated, you got to have 30 students in a group. There's a mathematical reason. If there's not enough kids in a group, can you really draw an inference about that school? So that's what the rules say. Well, we happened to get a grade on a subgroup of students where we only had 16 students that made up that subgroup. Well, we called the State Department. We were told, well, you only have 16 students, but each student took a reading and a math test, so that gives you 32 students, so now you have a group. Well, the rules don't say that if you have 30 total tests. It says you've got 30 students in the same conversation. On the high school grade card, we have a part about advanced placement classes, about advanced classes. Well, we looked at our advanced class numbers, and we're going, wait a minute, we had more advanced courses taken than you're recording. Well, no, we only give you credit for each student who takes an advanced course. So if you have a student who's enrolled in AP Stat and AP History and AP Biology, he doesn't count 3 times, he only counts 1. And we're just kind of, wait a minute. Over here, you say 30 students. Over here, you say courses. You just don't know what to say. Where does the logic in all this? So that's one area. We have a rule in place, and as far as I can determine, we're the only state in the union that did this in our waiver, that we have the federal government, when all this came back, said that you need to find a way that you're going to let us know how the lowest performing subgroups in your state are performing. If you remember No Child Left Behind, you had students grouped by racial categories. You had students based on free reduced lunch, whether they were English language learners, whether they were male or female. You had all these subgroups. And the Fed said you got to have 3. Whatever your lowest performing 3 are, we want you to monitor those for your state. Okay? Well, our state came up with this grand design that said we're gonna have this list of schools that we're going to monitor, and it's always going to be 30% of the schools. So 30% of the lowest performing schools will be identified as low performing schools. 30%. We don't know why they chose. Or why would you put a system that says that automatically, regardless of how anybody performs, that 30% of the schools in your state are going to be identified as a focus school or a low performing? Why would you do that? Now, it could be that maybe 70% of your schools need to be identified as low performing for that particular subgroup. But to artificially say 30% doesn't make sense to me. And the way the scoring's done, once those schools are identified, they're probably never going to get off that list. They don't have a chance to move up. The other thing that's happened, and this is what's caused the suburban schools so much angst, is that because it has to be 30%, if you got your score and you realized there was a mistake and you appealed that and they recalculated and you moved out of the 30%, Well, that meant somebody else who a week before had gotten a report that said everything's fine, now they get a report that says, oh, by the way, now you're in the 30%. So, I had one school district that they got one school out and had 2 schools added. So you've had those kinds of things. So all that, and then there are lots of others. And the other issue has been, and it's been this way for the last couple of years, the information we get from the State Department, whether it's A to F grade card, whether it's anything else, changes. I can't tell you how many times in the last year I've received an email that tells us something, and then 2 hours later or 2 days later I get an email that says, oh, forget the last email. That's not right, we're now doing this. Some of that's because of new personnel. They are understaffed. And so all that has boiled into that we don't think this is a fair way to evaluate our schools. We don't think it is. I say when I'm talking about school superintendents, we don't think it's painting an accurate picture of the academic performance. We don't think it's a good thing to do. And it's not an Oklahoma idea. It's not like somebody in the legislature said, hey, we want to find a new way to rate our schools, and brought some people in and said, brought some school leaders, parents, business people, and said, craft a system that will speak to our communities. That's not what they did. They pulled this out of Florida. Well, on every standard of academic progress, Oklahoma scores better than Florida. So I don't know why we would pick something out of Florida to base our education model on, other than the former governor of Georgia, Jeb Bush, has formed an education group, and he goes around the country telling people they ought to adopt what they did in Florida. That's his job now. He's not governor anymore, and that's how he's stayed involved in public life, is by this group that he runs. And obviously we have a Republican legislature and Republican state superintendent. Jeb Bush is a very popular figure in Republican circles, and so they've picked this model. And here's the other part of this, and I said this in the article the other day, and I've said this multiple times, whenever our school district voted, when our board voted to join the other boards in the state that are protesting the use of state tests. The test that we're using to identify schools as being to get a letter grade, the test is not designed to evaluate schools. The test is designed to give school teachers, principals, curriculum personnel, and superintendents, and parents information about their individual child's performance. That's what the test is for, so that we can make educational decisions about that child. And what do we need to do educationally? How do we need to change instruction? Where are the weaknesses that child has academically that we need to address? That's what the tests are designed for. They're not designed to evaluate schools, and they're not designed to evaluate teachers. It'd be the same thing if you went to the doctor's office today and you told them that, I don't know, you didn't feel well, and so they did blood work, and they looked at the blood work, and then they put a cast on your arm without giving you an x-ray. Well, you checked my blood, why are you putting a cast on my arm? That's not the blood work you did wasn't to tell you whether I needed a cast or not. You do an x-ray to determine whether somebody needs a cast. And so we're using tests inappropriately to make decisions and to label schools. At the end of the day, what you're going to find is that when you look at scores, how schools have scored in grades, you're going to find there's going to be a direct correlation between poverty and school grade. The schools with the lowest rates of poverty will have the higher grade. The schools with the highest rates of poverty will have lower grades. So I don't think that it comes anywhere close to reflecting the hard work that teachers put in and the real academic progress that students are making. And what makes that sad from my perspective is there are tests out there that will measure academic growth within a year. If we really want to know where a student started at the first of the year and where he ends up at the end of the year and how much growth he got, we can measure that. And we do that in this district. We measure that for students from kindergarten through 8th grade in the areas of reading and math. We know how much growth our kids get. And we know that we have students who show great levels of academic growth, but they don't score well on the CRT, because the CRT at the end of the day is a norm reference test. So, those are the things that are all a big part of this conversation. So we'll see what happens. The state board took one small part of the test or the grading system and told the State Department of Education to look at it again. I think there will be some changes, but what I will say is this, and our grades are all right. Just thinking of as it from a student standpoint, we're all C's and B's. We don't have an A. We don't have a school with an A. We don't have any schools with a D or an F. So it kind of looks like that grade card I brought home a lot. It was kind of a mixed bag of some C's and B's, and not enough to get me in a whole lot of trouble at home, but enough to get I don't know what my dad was. If you got a C, he wanted a B. If you got a B, he wanted an A.
This, if people are not familiar, they need to read up on this. It's so complicated and it's so diverse. How I ask you that question is something I thought about for 2 hours today.
Right.
How do I even ask a question that has so many open-ended answers? Mm-hmm. And, when I think about it, our schools are really accountable. I mean, it's very open, and I guess that's the one thing, is that when you look at the people that are involved, the superintendents, I think it was 267
right.
people that we're putting in charge of our school districts. That's a lot of people that know a lot of education, and just common sense would tell you that maybe there's a better answer out there than what the state is trying to push on.
And again, we've been since this has happened, and those of us who signed on to this, who supported the action that took place in Oklahoma City last week and took place again on Monday, we've been accused of being whiners, and we've been accused of being the kid who races home to white out his grade card so parents don't see it. Obviously, there are different levels of involvement within our community by parents in their children's education. But I really believe that the vast majority of our parents know about our schools. Right. They know our teachers, they know our administrative staff. It's interesting, I've been here 9 years, and I've had lots of people in my office because of a personality conflict. They get into a disagreement with a teacher or with a principal, and it's a personality conflict, and it typically revolves around some kind of disciplinary action. Child had to stay after school, child got suspended from school, those kinds of things. I've never, in my 9 years, had somebody come in and complain to me about the quality of education in general in our district. Obviously, we're like any, we have a lot of employees, and I'm not going to sit here today and say that all 380 of our teachers are the top 10% of their profession. You can't say that about any organization. We continually, we do the best we can. We hire the best people we can every year. We put those folks in classrooms. We provide them with supervision. We provide them directions on how to improve. And if they don't improve, then we don't bring them back the next year. And I don't know any other way to do it other than that. We talk to our parents about their student results. Our parents probably, I'd venture to say that our parents get more academic information about their child than any other school district in Oklahoma. We do the state test. They know what those results are. We do the MAP assessment, which is something we're not required to do by law, but we do that, and we give that assessment 3 times a year, and we talk to parents about where their children are academically, You know, where they were last year, where they are this year, how do they compare with the kids in their school, how do they compare with the nation as a whole, how do they compare with the district as a whole. We lay all that out for them. They see that. We do assessments using a program called Renaissance Place. We do literacy first assessments. You know, those poor kids are getting assessed all the time, and we provide that information to parents. Now, again, some parents stay up with that, other parents don't. And we're getting better. You know, we're looking at a new student information system so that we can put more of that stuff online, so for more parents it'll be just a click away. So our parents know. I think what all this is about, I think it makes some people in Oklahoma City mad that they think they don't understand why more parents don't pull their kids from school and take them someplace else when they look at a school and they say that school is low performing. Well, the reason for that is what they don't see, what the grade card doesn't show, is they don't show the amount of extra time that teachers are spending with students. It doesn't show how much teachers care for those students and that they're making sure they have shoes and they have coats, that they've got food to eat. Those grade cards don't show those things. And there's more to school than just academic performance. That tells us what a school's like. Parents want, my experience has been, parents want the same thing I wanted as a parent. I want people to care about my child. I want people that expect my child to do well. And I want my child to get better. You know, the interesting thing about when we look at the grade card, you know, if you think about education as a progression, okay? If you look at when our grade cards come out, what you'll see is that we have a mixed bag of performance at the elementary level. We have C's and B's. But you get to the secondary level, and all three of our sites have a grade of B. And if you look at the instruction part of this, at high school performance, and it almost, when we look at language, English, math, science, our scores are in the mid to high 80s. I mean, we almost score some A's in some academic areas. Now, those are the same kids that were in elementary school that are now in high school 8 years later. And if you go back and look at our district test scores 8 years ago, again, we have a lot of angst about some of our schools and their performance. But what I believe these results show, and it has shown here for years, that yes, some of our students struggle when they start school for lots of reasons. But if they stay with us and they finish at Ponca City High School and they buy into what we're offering, they come to school, they give us a fair effort, that they're going to be successful academically. And at the end of the day, as a superintendent, as a parent, as a grandparent now, that's what I want. I want a system that's going to help my child grow and to develop to their fullest potential. Again, are we perfect? No. We've got 5,000 students. I'm sure that there's a percentage of those folks who don't like a lot of what we do. We do the best.
Every school district in the
That's
state.
every school district in America, since the history of time.
Absolutely.
That's the way it's been. And look, we don't have a blind eye to our weaknesses. We know that we need to do a better job with our special education students. We know that we need to do a better job of getting experienced teachers into some of our poorest schools. And we work to do that. So we know what the issues are. Obviously, I resent any time somebody does a one test and paints a broad picture of our school. And we fought that here 3 years ago when we were labeled as a district in need of improvement, because of the scores of basically two subgroups of students that were probably less than, you look at those two schools and the students that were in that subgroup, they're less than 5% of our student body. But yet they've given us this label as in need of improvement, which is, and that's the other thing that people really object to, is when you label a school based upon such a small percentage of the students. It's the world we live in. You don't want to be called a whiner, and you don't want to be called a complainer. But at the same time, we have an obligation to defend our schools. And that's really what this is about, is getting the message out that this is not an accurate reflection of our schools. When I look at the high school's academic performance, I mean, 22.5 average ACT, one of the top 10 scored in the state of Oklahoma. We should have had a grade of A. I'll give you one more thing about this school report card. In the area of ACT performance, we got a grade, I think it was a B. May have been a C. Now, it's only 0.1% of the overall grade. But I looked at that when I got it and said, now wait a minute. We've got an ACT score of 22.5. There's only 10 public schools, traditional schools. I'm not counting magnets, so the School of Math and Science, but 10 schools like our high school, where everybody who lives in that area goes to that school. Of the 500 high schools in the state of Oklahoma. There's only 10 that scored better than we did.
Mm-hmm.
Why? How can that not be an A?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's excellent academic. How can that not be an A?
98th percentile.
Yeah, how can that not be an A? But that's the formula that's in place, and I think to get an A, you've got to have, I don't know, ACT score average of 28 or I don't know what it is, but it's some number that's not realistic. Graduation rate's another one. Our graduation rate, we got a C. Graduation rate's been an issue here for us. Because we got a 70%. And I won't get into how graduation rate's figured, but the national goal for graduation rate is to get 90% of our high school students graduated. I think 2020 is the year we want to see that happen. Well, the way our scores is set up, to get an A in graduation rate for the state of Oklahoma, you got to have between a 90 and 100% of your kids. Well, the national goal is 90. I think there's maybe 2 large high schools in the state that exceed 90. One of the Edmond schools and maybe Jinx.
There's got to be room for the rest of those schools.
There's got to be, and to think that, first of all, 100% is not attainable. Mm-hmm. We're not going to have 100% of the kids who enroll as 9th graders finish 4 years later. And for no other reason, because of the laws on special education and how long some of those severe handicapped kids have to complete. We're required to provide them schooling until they're 23. So there's just a lot of that kind of stuff that, what are we after here? We want graduation rates to improve. I think the national average on graduation rate is somewhere around 75% right now. So we're below the national average, and that's not acceptable for us. But it's not like we're missing the mark by a whole bunch, and that's the thing that's irritating about all this. And so then you get down to, well, why are we doing this? Are we really wanting to paint a picture? Are we wanting to drive students to charter schools? Are we wanting to have a reason to provide vouchers? Because at the end of the day, I don't think very many of us, and I put myself in this camp, I'm not sure that Superintendent Barisi is 100% loyal supporter, what I consider a loyal supporter of public education. But that's my view. I think she would argue differently. She would say, she said many times that she wants all our public schools to be so good that nobody wants to go to a charter. But the reality is, if you look at charters, they have ways of limiting enrollment, and this is tough at the time, but you think about a charter and how it works, they'll tell you that anybody can enroll. Well, that's true, but if you live in Oklahoma City and you want to go to Harding Prep, which is a charter school she started, but you can't get a ride to Harding Prep, then you can't go to Harding Prep because they don't provide transportation. So immediately, the students that go to Harding Prep are the students who have parents in Oklahoma City that have work schedules that are flexible enough to allow them every day to take their kids to school and pick them up, or who it's important enough for them that their kids go to Harding Prep that they make the effort to be able to provide them transportation. Well, so that student body is not reflective of the students who live in Oklahoma City because of that. So those things are all factors, and it doesn't help that at the same time the grade card's coming out, the state superintendent has said she's in favor of a law that would allow, if 50% plus one of the parents in a school and the school was low performing, signed a petition, that they could either fire all the teachers or turn the school into a charter school. I mean, you know, somebody's made a movie, and now we're going to base education policy on a movie that, you know, again, we all know, we all know that movies like to sensationalize things. And, you know, what we ought to be focused on are those things that we know bring sustained improvement to learning. What you know, what improves learning over time? I remember the movie, I think it was Stand and Deliver. The guy goes into the calculus class in inner city Los Angeles and teaches a group of poor kids calculus, and they score on the AP test. I forget the guy's name. That's great, you know, but was that? But did that affect education all across that district? Well, it didn't. What they don't tell you in the movie is that the kids in that school were the high performing students from that area. They may have had issues, you know, that kind of got in the way of performance, but they were students who had been determined that they were high ability kids. And so again, you know, you got to dig underneath the Hollywood stuff and see exactly what happened. Does that mean that we shouldn't have high expectations? Absolutely not. One reason he was successful is he had a high expectation of those kids. We need to have high expectations for everybody. So, you know, what works? What can do the most good for everyone? And then let's have an honest discussion about student performance. You know, we ought to be able to come up with a system that evaluates schools, that finds a way that accommodates the poverty issue so that teachers who work in those schools can be rewarded for their work they do and be recognized that they're doing a great job for those kids.
Certainly in November, I bet we hear more about this. Thanks for your time, Dr. Pennington, Dr. David Pennington, as we talk about the October board meeting, our board wrap-up show.